Hello.
Hey.
Good morning.
Hey.
How are you gentlemen doing?
Not too bad.
Currently brewing tea.
What's that?
I'm just saying that I'm currently brewing tea.
Oh, brewing tea. I heard like Humpty Dumpty, and I'm like, what?
I heard the brewing, and then I thought like it's a little bit early for beer, so must be something else. But then you don't know.
5 p.m. at my place, so.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, you're 1 hour ahead. Yeah, and that's pop o'clock already. Yeah, that's fine. That works.
I don't judge. Yeah. Whenever your pop o'clock is fine by me.
We are a how do you say, multi-time zone, multinational, multicultural team, right? There's always some place where it's pop o'clock, right?
It's 5 o'clock everywhere. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Somewhere.
Somewhere. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was a Freudian slip, maybe right there. You know, it's 5 o'clock.
You wish it's 5 p.m. everywhere. Oh. It's almost weekend, right? I mean, it's over. Like I didn't know the term. It's an American term, I believe. Hump day, right? Wednesday, hump day. I was a little not offended, but I was like, dude, that's not really appropriate. And then like, oh, the week,
the hump of the week is the
it's like, yes. All right, that makes a lot more sense now to me.
Yeah, it always struck me weird too, and I generally don't use the term, but that is technically the basis.
I don't use it either, but now when I hear it, I go like, okay, that means we're over the worst, right? More or less.
Indeed. I figured I don't have a ton right now because I have been schemata-ing mostly. But I figured if there were my only goals are to sort of say, hey, schemata's there, and we can talk about that a bit perhaps, although I don't think it really necessarily matters that much for all of us.
Right.
But then if there was any follow-up from last week, I thought it'd be good to cover. And then I was hoping to, again, just try to make it clear, because we don't have good written up issues as to exactly like the minimal set of things we need to do. I was hoping to quickly review those again. Although I will note that I am pretty sure somewhere back in the summer when Matthias was looking at like writing docs and we were trying to do variable interpolation without having to write files. Yeah, I think I am 99% sure that I just like missed it, because we absolutely should be able to pass in parameters from the command line using the Q binary and like render out JSON from poly packages that are written today.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, but our docs don't say that, which is the
that's at least my hope and expectation.
Well, yes, no, like we can, but our docs don't say it, and we like that was one wall that we hit a while ago, and one thing that we wanted to do with the basic CLI.
I do have one question, or I don't know if you want to make that an official agenda item or not, but essentially following up on what you said last, although I know it's not like core poly business, but it is kind of like important in terms of your re-platforming, re-architecting, redesign, rewrite, whatever you want to call it in Grafana. It's probably a standing question. Like, is there any update, anything refined, any new insights, any new commitments, or that was a nice plan, but it's not abundant, or like anything?
No, right. Like one of my guys did a demo to POC of this basically working yesterday. So like this is a large umbrella term, but the basic architecture of like, okay, here's an intent sub API, and we treat Grafana like an intent sub API that has the API server shape that delegates to an external API server and registers with that API server as an operator in order to be able to ingest like Kubernetes shaped objects. That's what we demoed, and it works, right? Like, he cube cuddled in some dashboards from like the world's stupidest CRD definition of a dashboard, where like the contents of it is essentially just a string. But for the purposes of, like it seems so obvious that it should work. Like, do you really need to POC it? But it's important to POC it, and we did, and it works.
Of course.
So like, right. So we have we have a thing with the loop in place. At this point, I would say that, we are marshaling further effort behind this. There is considerable discussion going on internally, and I am the position that we're at now, and the reason that I am like, head all the way down on getting Schemata things done is because we are going to, like, we have a number of schematization goals. And clearly we're not going to be able to schematize the dashboards without Schemata. Like, we can't do that in conventional CRD form really in any way, shape, or form. It's just not going to suffice. So we need the Schemata stuff in good shape, docs written, crucially, examples written. This is how you do it in Q. This is how you do it in Go.
Right.
Like, a really firm foundation, because there are like 4 fully disjoint groups of people within Grafana that need to know about that stuff, essentially, in order to push this work forward. So that's why I'm focused on.
Can I quickly pause there? Because I'd love to, like, I'm kind of able to read Q, but I'm not really yet, or still not really in a place to actually write or author Q. Yeah. I was wondering if we want to do something about it. It's kind of like a bit selfish, a bit kind of like investing in the community, whatever. What do you think about a kind of like, we could do that, a joint thing? We could do that. I don't know where and how to do it, but I'm more than happy to help out with that, or maybe own it if you think it makes sense. If you have enough people from your end who are interested, I have a few as well.
No, that'd be
and
great.
As I said, we could even, like, maybe, I don't know, does what's his name? Marco, right? Mark?
Which
Mr. Q? Which? Mr. Q?
Marcel.
Marcel, sorry, Marcel.
Yes, yeah.
If you see that recording, I'm very sorry, Marcel. If he does that kind of thing, or if he has some like, who would teach such a thing, or maybe you are the one, Sam. You are the Q master. Who knows? I don't want to put you on the spot there, but
no.
But yeah, I do have a analogy, and that is Julius doing the Prometheus, his training sessions, right, where he offers that, goes on site or whatever. He has the website where you can go through that, and then he gives the courses, and something like that. And maybe, as I said, maybe this is something Marcel had in mind anyways and has already an offer in there. But doing something like that, as I said, selfishly, I would love to, and I'm kind of like, I already learn other languages like Chinese and so on. I'm already maxed out with learning new languages on my own. But if there's a course, or it's like, here are 4 hours or whatever, where we intensively, this kind of like Q boot camp, right? Like, now you get it, and 4 hours of your time, and off you go. That would be awesome. I don't know if others.
No, I think that would be huge, actually. I mean, I am sure that we would have a bunch of interest from our end. But the main question that pops into my mind is like, I don't know what approach I would take to teaching people about it. Like, so I don't know what the curriculum would be, but yes, like, I think those are answerable questions, like, and if we wanted to put something like that together, I'm certain there would be interest from Grafana side. I am certain that there would be people in the Q community who are interested in working on something like that, supporting it. I think the curriculum question is more than a general curriculum question, just to the extent that, like, the question of, like, what kinds of examples you give and what kind of context you're trying to use Q in ends up being sort of significant. But
we have a very clear goal here, right? We're not just learning Q out of general curiosity, but we have a very, like, we want to be able to write poly packages and author poly, right? That's a very clear scope, right? It's not like general interest. So, like, we can take it offline. I didn't want to sidetrack the whole conversation, but when you said,
it's fine. I think that'd be I do think it's a significant blocker, and I think it's one of the ones that like I think it'd be great. So let's we can talk about it offline, as you say.
Just my 5 cents. I think Marcel already has a site about it. and it's called Tutorials.
Yes, yes.
And with
I know
contact
that
with everything, so maybe we
I
should
know
just
that one,
contact.
but as I said, this kind of like self-service, like you know, I know how it is with language learning. You need to like either you reserve a day, an hour a day, and go there and do it. Like I cannot do that anymore. I need for that. I really would need some, like a 4-hour boot camp or whatever, something where someone really knows what they're doing and walks me through interactively there for answering questions. I can just say like what Julius is doing for Prometheus, essentially that kind of training.
Yeah, but that's exactly what his like website says. If you want that, contact.
Oh, you're saying he's also offering training for that? I didn't know that.
There's like contact with services for development, support, training, workshops, consulting, integration, and Q feature development. So if you want that, there's a contact link.
Oh.
That's why I'm saying, but I'm not referring to the whole site, but you can go over and
I didn't know that. Thank you. I didn't okay, I didn't. Obviously, I'm not looking at getting help, right? Like, why would I look at that site?
To be clear,
that would make too much sense.
That's not Marcel. That's a community member.
No. Yeah. That's not Marcel.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Thank you. That makes sense.
Cool. Yeah. So let's. I mean, I know I do think we should figure. I've tried to do sort of some of that with the like the community hack sessions. Just and like an opportunity to sort of see Q written and discuss it and get a better sense of how it works.
Right.
But yeah.
But it's the same issue, right? Like it's when I look at over your shoulder and see like it's like yeah, sure, that makes sense. But then if I need to do it myself, like it's the difference between I watch a video on YouTube about the pronunciation of this word in Mandarin, sure, right? And then I'm chatting with someone like hang on, like translate. Like it's a difference, right? It's a difference between doing it yourself and watching someone else, where it's kind of of course it's obvious that you're doing that now.
Yeah, totally. No, it makes sense. Absolutely. Cool. Okay, so yeah, I mean, we can let's talk more about it.
Do it offline.
Async, but yeah. All right. So hey, we should do some Q training, poly specific.
And as I said, I mean, if we want to do that in a more open fashion, where we just say like, hey, if you're interested in sign up, we do a group, like maybe if that person, I don't know who Mr. Hofstetter is, but is kind of flexible, saying like, if we bring 50 people at once or 30 people at once or whatever, we there's a kind of group discount or whatever. So you could say like, hey, if you're interested in that, it's, I don't know, $50 each or whatever. And I don't know, I have no idea. But that we don't have to be closed, right?
Yep. Yeah, we can figure it out. Let's definitely look into it, because yes, this is an important. Especially if we can farm it out, that'd be great. Yeah. Okay. So I guess about the Schemata repo, the main thing to note here, like, is Schemata has in the past been embedded in Grafana, the actual core logic for the system. And what's in that repo now, like every time it's been about like 3 to 4 major iterations of like what Schemata is, and this now being like iteration 4. And one that at this point I'm reasonably happy with. What's in there is almost all of the logic to do the major operations that we're supposed to be able to do with them. Certainly you define Schemata, but also doing things like translating objects. I just shipped up code for that this morning that I haven't tested, but like plausibly, stick a dashboard in at some version, suck it out at another version with like the list of lacuna that describe any problems in the translation. You can do that all in native Q, as well as doing validation and other stuff like that. So
can I ask a quick question there in terms of validation? It's like one use case that I often have is, and I don't know, I think there is a Grafana feature for that, but I'm not 100% sure, where you kind of like say, yeah, there is one, I can't remember what the name is, but it's kind of like make a sanitized version, right? One that you can share where it strips out all the things. And sometimes I wish I could just say like, hey, just highlight me, because I know better which information I'd like to strip. I don't want to like the stripping is, or the pruning is sometimes a little bit too aggressive. It's like you're stripping out too many things that I'd actually like to share, but I don't want to, like my account ID or like anything that I want to be able to say this or that. And if that would be possible to kind of like say on a almost a semantic level, saying like, hey, can you, I don't know, it's not validation, it's kind of like checking, sanity checking, or whatever you want to call it, or
linting would probably in the category of linting, maybe. But I mean, so the one that unless when you go to export a dashboard, you can do like there's a button you can click that says optimize for sharing, right? Is that the one you're
yes,
that's
about? That's the one. Yeah. I mean, optimize for sharing. That's the one I mean.
Yeah, the logic that's used to do that is I don't know what that list has been around for a long time, but that is at the moment entirely orthogonal to what we're doing schema-wise. My sense is, so I am not a fan of the idea that dashboards have multiple representations. Like this is not, we should not be having two. If we move towards a schematized system, there is an object, it has a schema. This is what you get out of it. The question of like removing certain information from it, we have default trimming, which is a major thing. The ability to just like strip out values from it. We talk about this a lot, like strip out values from the dashboard that correspond to schema specified defaults. Currently, the state of our defaults mean that when you run default trimming on a dashboard, we take out about 10% of it on most of the dashboards that I've seen, which I want that to be closer to like 70%.
Right.
But that's separate from what you're talking about. This is
let me give you another example. Maybe that's more obvious then. Think of PII, right? Personal identifier information, or GDPR in Europe, right? Imagine I'm able to say in a schema, if something has this kind of information in there, this is something that looks like an email, or it looks like something in a certain region, or whatever it is, whatever I define as PII or GDPR, someone could put that together, saying like, this is the kind of GDPR or PII information I do not want someone to share. So if I go through that step, it would highlight it in red or give me a div or whatever the UX is, I don't care. But the input would be make it GDPR compliant share, or make it PII safe, or whatever I call that. And then it would give me as a validation output or linting or verification output, whatever you want to call it, as, oh, here are the 3 fields or the 3 areas that you should delete, or I can remove it for you, or whatever, right? Does that make sense?
No, it does. I think the issue tends to be with this, right? The thing that actually has the PII in it, with the GDPR protected information, is data. It's not the config. It's what flows through the system, right?
Well, so I'm thinking of an existing workflow, right? If I do that currently, right, what I would do is I would export the raw JSON. Then I would do it outside with some custom logic, a Python script, or this or that, whatever.
Can you talk about like a specific field that you were imagining that you would want to eliminate?
So, for example, I'm currently authoring a recipe on an upcoming plugin. I can't tell the details because it's still to be launched. But and I'm exporting that dashboard because I want to make that part of the recipe that people can just use it, import it. And one of the things there is I don't want my it's like against the policies to have the account ID, my AWS account ID that I'm using in there, right? So in this case, I would just say, give me everywhere where my account ID, and you can very much clearly define how an account ID looks like, right? This is very clearly specified. So I say wherever that occurs, and that's the question, is like, are you just specifying this as a kind of regular expression, if you wish, or can you define that more on a semantic level? I don't want to redefine what an account ID is. I want to say like an account ID, right? And there is a definition of an AWS account ID, and then there might be other platforms and other environments have other identifiers or whatever, that as long as there's a clear definition of what it is, right? And I'd rather have a few false positives than something slips through in that sense.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of what I don't figure out.
So what you're saying is that this account ID ends up actually being in a field that is exported in dashboard JSON and needs to be sanitized out. Okay.
Correct.
So there's a couple things here. So the first one is to say that, like, no, in general, no. Like, in general, we can't just sort of say for every, I mean, the schema says, like, this is a string. And if you're talking about the case where, like, essentially search the whole dashboard, all of the strings in the object to see if it has something that complies to the shape, that's a search. It's not a schema. That's a procedure for checking all of the contents of the schema to see if any of the strings conform to something.
But that, you see, that's where my understanding of Q is, like, too short, because I thought it was possible to say, like, this is, like, as you can do in Go, right? This is a string, but you define a new data type that is your own. Like, this is an AWS account ID, which is a type string, right? But it's just a string, but it has a clear semantics.
But so if you think about this from the perspective, like, the question here would be, what statement are you actually trying to make at the schema level with respect to account statements? You're trying to make, like, a logical not statement, like, say this string can't have this shape.
I see.
So so this is the sort of simple answer. That said, like, I think there are a couple interesting pieces here that we can think about. I mean, again, it's a search. Q has a whole, like, querying API thing that it hasn't that is a work in progress, but, like, it explicitly does not do search at the moment. However, at some point in the future, being able to do something like search over a data structure for some, like, regular expression pattern is likely something that you will be able to do in native Q. That still doesn't mean that we want it in the schema definition itself, but there is an interesting case when we start talking about, basically, I think that what this does is this maps onto the class of things policy, essentially, right? I want to write a policy. The policy depends on the existence of the schema, because it's naming fields that exist in the schema. I keep searching this thing. But you want to write a ban policy effectively on anything that matches the following regular expression for any string in the schema. And that is something that we could do natively in Q once that schema or once the query extension exists, or it's something that we could supplement. We could do perfectly well in Go and build on top of the schemas as they are today, which is sort of Q's recommendation.
Yeah, because I'm this think big in the sense of, like, I envision a bunch of, like, imagine, like, you have a snippet library, right, where you can have reusable Q snippets that you can just take, right? Why should I? It's like regular expression snippets, right? Like, why should I be the 500,000th person who defines an IPv4 address? Like, I can just grab I just need to know which syntax, right? And I just use that, and that kind of. But maybe that's already getting ahead of us.
I mean, like, it is a fair bit ahead. I think the main question with these, I think this is a really interesting use case. I think it is really important, and I do, like I said, I put this in the policy category. It is the pieces you need a general framework for expressing, like, a policy object, which means that we need some generalized concept of the relation between this, like, Q object and then the schemas that it's operating over, and, like, which ones it should apply to. Then you need some kind of tool in, like, in your pipeline. Maybe it's something we could attach to Grafana itself that actually, like, runs these policies, whether it's for sanitization purposes or for linting purposes. Like, but so there are a few pieces that need to be in place in order to facilitate it. But the fundamental concept of, like, make a static to be able to create an object that is the representation of, I don't want AWS account IDs showing up in strings in this, and I want to encapsulate this into a reusable snippet of logic that's usable for anybody's Grafana dashboard everywhere, is very much, like, something that I think we'll get to. It's further away, but it is a natural, very adjacent to the path that we're on.
I'll stop sidetracking now, because that's really going ahead.
Okay, so the schemata repo wise, like, I think the thing that is code's a mess there. The README isn't really there, but, well, the code's not really a mess there. It's mostly there. So I'll be putting tests and then crucially like a doc site with a lot of examples and sort of tutorial, like, okay, here's how you do this in Q, here's how you do this in Go, here's how you write a schemata, here's how you use it to actually accomplish the, validate, translate things that you want to do. And then shortly thereafter, in fact, maybe even today, writing a, there's one piece of it I can't do, but basically a bit of logic that will take a schemata declaration and turn it into a CRD. So, full on CRD, like you have to pass a little bit of extra info in, but on the other side of it, you get a CRD. The only bit that I cannot do in pure Q with that is actually encode Q as OpenAPI in the sub portion of the CRD that needs to be in OpenAPI, but that's, it's like 4 lines of Go to do that. So at that point, we'll have a clearer path for being able to take these objects that we have in Poly, since they're all schemata, and like CRDify them, at least some of the operations we may want to do later on. But this is not what we're blocked on at the moment here. So I think there are a couple bits of validation that we need to do to like import the schemata repo in Poly, but for the most part, it's not critical for us. So instead, I was hoping that we could just once again, I feel like such an ass because I cannot, like, there's so much other stuff going on. I cannot keep, and I have so many like prerequisites that I'm meeting to making Poly stuff work that I cannot keep fixed in my mind. The clean next steps that we need for it to be useful. So, Pavel, you wrote the brief number 38 issue, importing existing JSON that makes sense as a Poly package. And the path that we have discussed for this is basically, I'm hoping to take notes as like you write, you say the requirements and I will take notes down into the issue so that we actually have it hammered out.
Yep. Okay, so 38, you mean JSON into Poly converter?
Yeah, that's the one.
So basically, the idea was that to increase adoption and to simplify adoption, we need something that would convert existing JSON mixins into a Poly package. That could be with, like, for the first, let's say MVP, just a basic conversion without any parameterization. So basically, we could render JSON into JSON and get that into a Poly package. But something like that, some tooling for that would be required. Does that make sense?
All right, so essential steps really just pieces for this workflow.
I will have to leave in a moment just to ask, can you make sure that you upload the video again afterwards?
I'm actually gonna start getting good at this, I think. Now that I have.
You mean like automating things? Like,
I mean, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get ahead of yourself. Come on.
You should write a queue pipeline that automatically.
Oh God.
Did you know that PromQL is Turing complete? So you could write it in PromQL that triggers a queue line. Okay, I'm seeing myself out now.
I was fighting Turing completeness this morning when I wrote the translate logic, since Q is mostly not Turing complete, but because the translate logic is essentially like you don't know a priori how big the schemata can be. Like you can have an infinite number of schema in there, and you can translate between any 2 points effectively in the history. You have to have like a translate loop that is as long as the thing. It's not because the loop is bounded because from the arguments how many iterations there will be, so it's not actually like Turing complete, but which means you can do it with list comprehensions. But there was some shit in there, let me tell you. It was weird getting that actually to be like written. It was fun. Anyway, yeah. So I will try to actually get good at uploading these things. So yes,
with that I see myself out.
Cool. All right.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Yeah. Okay. So essential pieces for this really just given a JSON mixin, render it rely on something else to render it to. How crazy?
Well, ideally, that would take JSONet and get into like convert into Q poly package. However, that might be too hard to actually do, but I don't know.
So right. So like ideally, this command is gonna shell out to JSON or something like that, and then suck in all of the JSON that it spews out. And
we can even pipe it. So you don't need to have JSONet embedded for anywhere.
Because the only assumption is that it follows the mixin rough structure of Okay.
Exactly.
All right. I mean, I don't think that should be. Yeah. Okay. All right. So given a JSON mixin, don't need to assume don't need to actually invoke JSONet from the binary. It's enough to accept on standard in. One skip only assumption to make is that we get a stream of JSON. Well, it's a stream of bytes. Well, what do we do YAML wise?
What do you mean YAML wise?
Well, so like, because there may be Prometheus loads, right? And they're not going to be JSON.
Well, they are.
Because of course they're right. Okay, so we're going through JSON, right? Because JSON will read the YAML and then okay, all right, all right. So only assumption makes that we get a stream of JSON, which will follow the convention on the naming conventions established in mixins for where different object types live. Given these inputs, convert them over and write out a poly package.
Yes. So just to like tell the higher level for that. So basically, we were thinking about creating something like you described lately. Basically, a poly package operator, however, for mixins, which means that we could be duplicating work because creating the same thing for basically the same purpose but in different languages doesn't make any sense. However, with that solved, like JSON to poly converter, we could just get into Q already and write it into like the poly package operator immediately, because we would have already the JSONet conversion in place, which means that the registry of mixins, which is basically monitoring.mixin.dev, because it serves the JSON list. Well, it's a JSON map of every mixin listed on the site with like subdirectory and GitHub directions. So we could use that, render JSONet, whatever, and inject that into like poly package operator.
Okay.
So that's basically the thing that I'm going for.
Right. All right. So then with this, that for a approach like that, there's obvious questions around parameters, right? Like.
Yep.
But. Well, I mean, there'll be the ones that we can render that don't have parameters, and then the ones that we can't, that do have parameters without any defaults. And I guess we take it one step at a time. Okay, so when you say an operator, like, I think I missed the context there. Like, is that just like a hypothetical one, or are you like actually?
No. The idea overall was to decouple all mixins from Cube Prometheus and put that into separate component called whatever operator, controller, or whatever you want to call it. It's basically take a CRD from here. Those are my options. This is where the mixin lives. Just apply it and put everything into a cluster with all those labels. So basically render a Prometheus rule and a config map for Grafana dashboard. That is basically what it needs to do right now with current state of things. So it's literally a simple pipeline that could be written in a bash script or whatever that could just apply that to a running cluster. However, the benefit of that is that you have that CRD, which means for people who are using Helm, you could use that as a CRD and parameterize every mixin that you have. Because right now you have the access to the mixin parameters from Kubernetes native object. Which means that for Kube Prometheus, it also simplifies things because now it decouples the management for mixins and the configuration for mixins from the configuration of objects inside the cluster. So the idea...
I missed the jump to that.
Yeah, so right now, as it is, the mixin basically doesn't know anything about Kubernetes. It's just a collection of alerts and a collection of rules and dashboards. That's all. However, Kube Prometheus knows everything about Kubernetes because it's a layer to actually run something in Kubernetes. So what it does, it uses the same configuration options as that are available to mixins, applies those configuration options, and embeds that into the native Kubernetes objects. The same goes for Helm chart.
So, the configuration you're talking about here is like whatever configuration is exposed by the mixin. This is what.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, we are mixing two things with mixins. So because we are provisioning the configuration options for majority of things, we are now mixing the configuration options for Kubernetes objects with configuration options for what we are actually deploying. This is fine for a bit of things, but not for everything. For Prometheus, we have Prometheus operator that manages that configuration, so that's fine. But mixins are the thing that we cannot do the same way. We cannot use the same like GitOps tools. The only way to actually modify those mixins is through JSONet, which means the adoption rate is much, much lower for the mixins because it just has like the cult of JSONet or whatever. So with decoupling those two things, so having the JSONet part taken care of by the operator running inside the cluster and taking the CR only, which would apply that to further consumption by other tools, we would like have larger adoption for the mixins. However, since we are having poly right now, I don't want to do that in JSONet because that doesn't make sense. We could just focus on the new thing, and if we have a translation layer from the older thing. And I mean here, I don't need like a huge translation layer. I don't need all the parameters from JSONet. We can kind of start from scratch with that. But for MVP, at least for MVP to have anything, I just need to inject, to take the JSONet and render as poly, like without any parameters for the start.
I mean
well, at least I need one job probably or something like that.
Yeah, you know it's so funny just because we repeatedly have butted up against this. I think Grafana as well. Like once you have parameters in there, everything gets more complicated, and it's so much easier just to not have things be parameterized. And ultimately, the difficulty in like introspecting what is parameterized in JSONet makes it just as hard to translate to Q as it does to actually use it directly, right?
Actually, like in case of mixins, that's fairly easy because basically every parameter that you can use is stored
specified in one place.
Yeah, it's specified in dash like underscore config, which means that everything that you can parameterize is in one place. Which kind
and if
of
you haven't done it there, you did it wrong. Yeah, no. So
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
This is the next thing I was going to say, right? Is that we do have a structural advantage here, which is that we know where to look for what acceptable parameter names are, which would plausibly make it easier to like scan the remainder of the project with it like a DOM parser, right? That just looks for those variable names. I mean that is not implausible as a path to trying to actually be able to translate parameters. I wouldn't want to, you know, I wouldn't trust it to be done without human review, probably, but still, like that's plausible as a way of capturing what I have to imagine is like 95% of the config out there.
Yeah, so. And the majority of like mixins, they have like very few parameters, so it is possible to do by hand or to have some to start with something. But for example, for Kubernetes mixin, we need some tool for this because it's literally impossible to get through all the options like by hand.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be okay. This is good. Like if we just have the simple conversion, then we can at least spit things out that are valid on the other side. There are, to be clear, like I would also say that most of the mixins out there are going to fail on the Grafana dashboards because our schemas do not work for any Grafana dashboard like prior to schema version 30, and they're not supposed to, right? So there will likely be a process for people where it's like, okay, go take your dashboard, load it up into a Grafana, and then just like re-export the thing back out. But that's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world to have to send them through that process because even just like, I think a command that just spits out the basic structure on disk and maybe spits out some empty spots, like here's where you paste the dashboard in, also maybe run the dashboard trimmer beforehand so that you've removed all the faults. That's enough that we can make a workflow around it. So, okay. All right. None of this is super difficult to do. I just have had my time completely consumed by everything else. So, all right. Yeah.
Don't we all?
It's true. I felt bad about it for a while. But I just I've accepted that getting the ball rolling with this Kubernetesification of Grafana has been, and despite there being a lot of interest in a lot of quarters, that's a major undertaking, right? And just getting alignment on an approach and all that sort of stuff has been tough. But I mean, now that we have it, so I should say actually, this is perhaps more interesting. We do now have on our roadmap essentially taking Grizzly. This is actually what's on the board behind me. So Grizzly is designed to work with Grafana objects mostly as they exist today, but could also easily work with Grafana objects when they're shaped like CRs and can essentially abstract over. So this is whatever JSON dashboard versus Kubernetes style dashboard is what the JD versus KD are supposed to be. So we are planning on having not an 8.3 since that's happening presently, but quite soon putting something actually into Grafana CLI that does the loading of objects from the CLI and we'll do validation of them. Pretty similar to pieces of what we would have a poly CLI do. The big difference though is that of course we have poly is oriented towards creating the package, the collection of objects, and but
just one question about it. Would it be possible with that tool? I'm just now thinking about what we were talking just a few minutes ago about default fields for dashboards.
Yep.
Would it be possible to have a tool that basically runs in CI, takes the JSON output, and shows you that, hey, this field is here by default, so don't include that? Because if yes, then we can put that into monitoring mixins that we have already, and the mixins that we have, we could remove that manually before doing any conversion to poly package.
Trivial, yeah. There's, I'll link you PR, because I had this sitting on my local literally since the beginning of October.
Yeah, if that tool exists, I could took a my English today. Right. I could take a look at that and implement in mixins that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me a sec here. I've got. Okay. So this introduces a resource trimming command. If you actually look at the body of the PR, you can see that it's really just calling into an API. So that's exposed in public. Like there is nothing private about what's happening here. To trim defaults, you like load the dashboard family, and then you call trim defaults, and you get your thing back. So there's no need to even rely on like the tool that we're going to ship with it, especially if you want to stick it into CI, right? Like for different purposes. But this will go in. You can use that, or you can just call the code. I designed the API specifically to be able to do things like this. Like I wanted us to, use the CLI or figure out how to put it into your own tools pretty easily.
Yeah, that's nice. I'll take a look at how it works.
Again, like you can only trim on valid things, so like the thing still needs to be like at least schema version 30 in order for trimming to work. But
yeah, that is fine. I assume it will break when the field is not in that schema.
Yeah, it will. The validation will fail, and then it just it won't be able to.
But that is also fine. But that means for CI, that means that we are not running at the latest. So let's fix it.
Okay. All right. I have to run. Actually, I have to take care of something. So
sure,
I'll let there. But cool. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.